Let's try a little thought experiment. Imagine you're dropped in the middle of a huge, quiet forest. All you've got is an axe and, well, the will to live. There are no blueprints, no hardware stores, nothing. Just this massive job of creating a world from absolute scratch. Now, that's not some reality TV show premise. For the early settlers, that was just Monday.
No, I'm serious. Just take a second. Where would you even begin? No power tools, no YouTube tutorials, just you, the land, and this really urgent need for shelter. For them, this wasn't some hypothetical question. It was their first and most important reality.
For the families that made that incredible journey to a new world, the wilderness was kind of like a double-edged sword. On one hand, it held all the promise of a future, but on the other, it was filled with constant threats. And their very first fight wasn't against some enemy they could see. It was against the elements themselves.
Yeah, this was never about building a dream home with great curb appeal. Not at all. It was about building a fortress against the unknown, a shield against the wild. Before you could even think about planting a single seed for a future crop, your family had to make it through the night. This was about survival, plain and simple.
So how on earth did they do it, right? How do you turn this intimidating, massive wilderness into a place you can actually call home? Well, the real genius wasn't how they looked at it. They had to start seeing the forest not as an obstacle, but as a giant ready-made hardware store.
The whole process was this amazing mix of common sense and just pure hard work. First, they'd have to clear a site, carve out a blank space for their new life. Then, using stones they pulled right out of the ground, they'd lay a foundation to keep out the damp. Then came the iconic log walls, which were just a monument to sheer grit. After that, the roof. And finally, this crucial step called chinking, basically stuffing a mix of mud, clay, and moss into every single gap to keep that precious warmth from escaping.
And check out the details here, especially that part about the windows. Glass was a total luxury, so instead, they used oiled paper or simple sliding wooden shutters. That one little fact tells you everything. It shows you a mindset where you didn't have the luxury of options, but you had to have ingenuity. They figured out a way to let in the light, to make a dark box feel like a home, using only what the land gave them.
And what was at the very heart of this little fortress? The fireplace. This thing was so much more than a heater. It was the engine of the entire home. It was its soul. Just imagine the constant sound of that fire, the smell of wood smoke, the fact that every single meal was cooked right there. In a world full of uncertainty, that fireplace was the warm, constant center of their entire universe. But of course, a house is more than just walls and a roof, right? It's the life that happens inside that makes it a home. And in the tiny, cramped space of a one-room settler cabin, every single thing had to earn its keep. There was absolutely no room for an object that only did one job.
So let's start with where they slept. Forget everything you know about a modern bed with a box spring. Instead, picture a giant wooden web. That's pretty much what a robe bed was. A simple wooden frame with ropes woven tightly back and forth to create a surprisingly strong base for a mattress that was probably just stuffed with straw or corn husks.
Okay, now here's a fantastic little bit of history you've probably used your whole life without even realizing it. See, those ropes would sag over time. So, to keep the bed firm, you had to use this special wrench-like tool called a bed key to tighten the ropes. You had to make the ropes tight for a good night's sleep. And that right there is where we get the phrase, sleep tight. Pretty cool, huh? All right, next up is the trestle table, and this thing is just a masterclass in smart, simple design. It was often just a big, smooth plank of wood sitting on top of a couple of wooden supports, kind of like sawhorses. But this one piece of furniture was the absolute workhorse of the settler home. Think about this table's day. In the morning, it's where you eat breakfast. A few hours later, it's a workbench for fixing tools or chopping vegetables. At night, it's the family dinner table. And then, here's its final trick. When the day was over, you could just lift the top off, fold up the legs, and lean the whole thing against the wall, instantly giving the family back their precious floor space. Just brilliant.
So, where did everybody sit? Well, not in chairs like we think of them. A proper chair with 4 legs and a back, that was actually a pretty complicated thing to build, and a luxury. Settlers were all about what was practical. So they used long benches that could fit a few people and simple 3-legged stools. They were way easier to make, took up less room, and hey, they got the job done.
Now, when you look at a comparison like this, it is so easy to just focus on the hardship, right? To see what they didn't have. But think about what was gained in that single, multi-purpose room. You couldn't just retreat to separate corners of the house. Your whole life was lived right there. in constant, close connection with your family, all of it centered around that one fire. That kind of living built a resilience and a bond that our separate, specialized rooms today can't always replicate.
So, what's the big takeaway from this little trip back in time? What can these humble, hand-built houses really teach us? Not just about history, but about ourselves and the world we've built.
You've probably heard that classic design rule, form follows function. But for a settler, this wasn't some artsy principle. It was a law of nature. In their world, form didn't just follow function, it was literally born from the immediate life-or-death demands of survival. And that's such a powerful reminder, isn't it? That sometimes the most clever, most elegant solutions come from the toughest situations. Every single object in that house tells a story. Not a story of decoration, but a story of a problem that was solved with creativity and whatever materials were at hand. That mindset shaped their entire world. So, the next time you feel a little overwhelmed by all the choices and complexities of modern life, maybe just take a second to think about the settler home. In our world of, let's face it, endless abundance, what can we really learn from their ingenuity, their incredible resilience, and their profound ability to build a good, meaningful life with only what was absolutely essential?